Hello all. Welcome to our backyard and our chicken run. My name's Alicia. I live on 1 acre of land, and we currently have 6 chickens. We've had at most 8 chickens, and we acquired our chickens just over 5 years ago. And we've learned a lot along the way. Recently, I've had a conversation with a couple of people thinking about getting chickens for the first time. So I'm going to do a series of videos here sharing what we've learned about having chickens, what we would do the same, what would we do different if we were starting with current knowledge today from scratch, what it would look like. So thank you for joining us. If you have things you would like to know, throw that in the comments. I can answer it, others that watch can answer it, and we can become a resource together here. So first thing, I'm just going to go over the very basics. My next videos are going to be stationary run versus mobile coop, protection from predators, and also managing their manure and using the chickens as a resource beyond just getting eggs. There's lots of things they can help provide your backyard, your garden, or your homestead. So first thing, just some basics. When you're thinking about having chickens and what you're going to keep them in, when we first got our chickens, it was one of those things. My husband's friend called, said, I know you guys have been thinking about having chickens, and I have chickens. What'd you find?
A grub.
Okay, well, here's husband. Come into frame so they can see the baby blues. Oh, no, I dropped it. We dropped chickens over there. Okay. So, side note, one thing that chickens are great at is eating some of the things that like to eat our garden. Chicken rugby going on behind us right now. So when you find the creepy crawlies, the grubs, the caterpillars, those kind of things, chickens love them. Food for chickens. Get them out of your garden or your your flower beds. But so my husband's friend called, said, I know you guys thought about having chickens at some point. That was like in our minds, like in the future at some point kind of thing. And he's like, I have chickens, or he had chicks. Do you want any? So he had offered them to us for free. We went to Tractor Supply. It was in the fall. We purchased a coop for on clearance. I'll put a picture next here of what that looks like. Now, that chicken coop that we purchased does not owe us a thing. It's done 6 winters for us. We've modified it a lot. If we were starting over, we wouldn't be buying one of those. They're convenient. They have the basics of what you need in them, but they are built with the least amount of materials possible. So if you need to modify, if you need to fix, there isn't a lot of wood to work with, to reinforce, to modify, that kind of thing. So, you know, if that's your path and that is the most convenient thing, it will work. It's not going to owe you anything by the time you have worn it out. We would not choose to go that route again. So the things that you need space for the chickens to roost at night. So just a 2x4 up off the ground that they can perch on. Probably 2x2, 2x3, that is perfectly fine. And you want about a foot per chicken of roosting space. So you need a place for them to roost. You need a place for them to lay their eggs. You need a place to hang the food and the water. I personally think during the warm weather is the easiest thing to hang both food and water. During the cold weather, we don't hang our water because we have a plate that it sits on that's plugged in that keeps the water from freezing. And you also want the food and water not in a place where the chickens are going to roost above it, so they're not pooping down onto it. So you have to consider the space for all of those things. Also, it is a good idea to have a way to close off your nesting boxes at night and open them during the day. because chickens like to get up and roost on things, so they may roost with their butt back end hanging over the nesting box. They drop about half of their manure while they're sleeping. You don't want your nesting box filled with chicken manure. For your nesting box, you need some kind of material to put in it. Usually we use hay, straw, wood shavings. I do prefer hay or straw. We have used leaves and grass clippings before, and they work just fine. They like some place dark and kind of quiet to go and lay their eggs, because at that time they're feeling the most vulnerable. They don't necessarily want to be somewhere loud or where there's a lot going on, because by nature they want to be away from things that are disruptive or could harm them. Now, when you're choosing your chickens, do some research on your breeds. These particular ones that are in front of you are the only breeds we've ever owned. Rhode Island Red, Barred Rock, and Welsumers. So when you go to buy your chicks, you have the option of straight run, which could be roosters or hens, could be male or female. In our area, we do not want roosters. People live entirely too close to us. And roosters crow early, but they crow all day long. So we do not want roosters. Now, pullets, if you get pullets or sexed chickens, those are ones that they've confirmed are female. So specifically for eggs, you do not have to have a rooster to have eggs. You need a rooster if you want fertilized eggs to possibly incubate, but chickens lay eggs whether there's a rooster present or not. So now it is possible to buy the pullets, the sexed ones that are supposed to be all hens, and still end up with a rooster. I have a friend that recently purchased chickens. They were supposed to be all hens, and has one that crows that is definitely not going to give her many eggs. All right, when it comes to your chicken breeds, I would recommend, like, they usually classify the breeds by their disposition and egg laying. You want something that's quiet and calm and good for the backyard, small homestead to start out with. There's some really cool breeds out there that I think are much higher strung. You probably don't want to start with. So look at the disposition of the chickens, look at their egg laying abilities, that kind of thing. Typically, we find we get around 5 or 6 eggs per week per chicken, approximately. That's when they're in their prime laying, which is when there's the most daylight. So you are going to have a chunk of time when you're buying both eggs and chicken feed. When the days start getting shorter, for our chickens, that's usually in October, they quit laying. They go into a molt, they lose their feathers, new feathers come in, which is good because the new feathers keep them warmer for the winter. But it's kind of a hormonal thing too. So when they go into a molt, they quit laying. When there's not a lot of daylight, they don't lay, because it makes sense. Like, they don't want to be raising chicks in the middle of winter. Their bodies know that. Now, you can supplement light. We've never done that. So that's something you're going to have to decide whether or not that's something you're going to do. So for us, we don't supplement light at all. October, mid to end of October is when they really taper off and stop laying eggs. And usually right around now, right around the middle of February, early to mid-February is when we start getting eggs, because the days are starting to get longer. Our chickens are old. At the moment, we haven't started getting eggs yet. We're planning on adding some chicks to our flock. Right now we have 6. The most we've had is 8. We lost one of our chickens during the summer to sickness, one of our chickens this fall she just actually fell asleep and died. So sickness, old age, it's hard to know exactly what. So consider that when you're buying your chickens, investing your money. I highly recommend chickens. They're wonderful to have in your backyard. They're so good for your garden, and that kind of thing. But it's not like you get chickens, you never buy eggs again. Now, you can do things to preserve your eggs. So when you're getting a lot of eggs and you're not going through all of them, you can freeze them. Last year I would just crack 2 eggs in a bowl, mix them up like I'm making scrambled eggs, and freeze them in a silicone tray, and then pop those out, put them in a bag, and use those in recipes. Now, I did not end up using any of those like make scrambled eggs, but I would use them for baking recipes and that kind of thing. You probably could. I just didn't. I typically use those in any recipe that would ask for 2 eggs. There is a way of preserving eggs in like a salt brine that I was planning on researching, but I didn't end up having enough eggs to do that with. Because one, our chickens are getting a little bit older, so we're not getting quite the production that we were, and two, when we travel over the summer, our friends that watch our chickens, kind of the payment is the eggs. So when we're away, we're not gathering those eggs, which is, you know, it's a wonderful trade because we have somebody that's keeping track of our chickens so that we're able to travel. I think in terms of number, like probably you know, for an average family of 4, I would think somewhere between 6 and 12 chickens would get you plenty of eggs, especially when they're in their prime. And then it's also not too overwhelming to manage. Now I think we're gonna buy somewhere between 4 and 6 more chicks this spring to add to our flock. We have 4 chickens that are 5 years old and 2 chickens that are 4 years old. Now in a commercial laying situation at, I think it's a year and a half, is it 2.5 years, they're done. They call their chickens, they're done, and they start over. Also, chickens aren't going to be laying eggs. If you get chicks, you've got 5 to 6 months typically before they start laying eggs. So you've got an investment of some time and money before you're getting eggs. And then once you get eggs, like I said, once the weather gets cold and the days get short, you're not going to get the production that you were. Now I'm just going to kind of gloss over the ways we keep our chickens. I'm going to go into a more depth video, a couple videos on these things. So during the winter, during the cold months, we keep our chickens here. This right over here is a cattle panel trellis that's covered in greenhouse plastic, and it has what's left of how we've modified our original Tractor Supply chicken coop in it, where they roost at night. So their food and water is in that like high tunnel greenhouse. And we also do deep bedding. All of our leaves, or not all of our leaves, but a lot of our fall leaves go in here so that we have somewhere between 12 and 24 inches of deep bedding. So this does a couple things. It keeps the chickens insulated from the cold ground, especially inside where they stay dry. I've got a puppy that really needs attention right now. And it also gives them a place to mix their manure in. So there's never a buildup of manure. It keeps it cleaner. It's more sanitary for them. And at the same time, them walking over it and scratching through it, one, it gives them something to do, to dig through those leaves. But also, as they're doing that, they're breaking down the leaves, they're mixing their manure in, and you're creating a fantastic compost. We also, over here, we dump our kitchen scraps, so the chickens eat whatever they want to out of that. Whatever they don't eat is just going to get mixed into the compost and top our garden with later. So that's in the cooler months. I'll go into more detail and show you those details in a separate video. During the warm months, we have what's called a chicken tractor or a mobile coop. Ours is an 8x8 by 4 foot box, essentially. And we move that 2 or 3 times every day. So that they have 64 square feet of grazing space, but we move them 2 or 3 times a day. So that's anywhere from 128 to 190 some square feet of grazing space that they cover every single day. So they're able to eat bugs, they're able to eat grass, and again, they're spreading that manure load out so that the ground is able to absorb it, and it just provides them with a clean, healthy environment. and us fantastic eggs. They eat the bugs in the backyard. They're good for pest control. It's supposed to cut your feed bill by about 20% to have them out grazing. We have never, we free ranged for very short periods of time. We've never free ranged fully our chickens because they get in the garden, they tear up your beds, they tear the mulch off of your garden beds or your flowers, they get in your neighbors' spaces. So free ranging is a very romantic idea, but it also results in chickens and chicken manure where you don't necessarily want it. And then also it opens them up to just attack from a hawk or neighborhood dogs and that kind of thing. So we've chosen to not do that, especially in the area where we're living, which is more of a suburban area. So there are some there are some of the things that I've learned about chicken keeping over the past 5 years. If you have questions, please throw those in the comments. Now, this isn't obviously the only way to do things. There's your lucky puppy. This is how we've learned. This is how we feel comfortable managing this. But one additional thing here, like the chickens have been in this space since right before Halloween. So like right at the end of October. And having this deep bedding in here, there's no chicken smell. There's no chicken manure smell from this space. And that's a lot of chicken manure dropped out here and inside that tunnel. So especially in a small space, in a suburban space where you have close neighbors, using the deep bedding, using, people have used, like we use our leaves because we have some very large maple trees. We're actually in the middle of our maple sap season. So we use all of our leaves on there. If you had grass clippings, mound them up in there. And a lot of people use like wood. Sit down, sir. Wood mulch, wood shavings, that kind of thing. Chipped trees, anything. As Joel Salatin, who's kind of the grandfather of regenerative ags, calls it a carbonaceous diaper. Carbon material that will absorb their waste, that actually makes it not a waste, but something to gather and use for your garden, for your flower beds, for amazing compost. All right, so next videos I'm going to go over kind of more details and show you some of the things in this stationary run, how we would do it again if we were starting from scratch, and then also another video on our mobile coop, and again the same thing, if we were starting fresh today, how we would do it, and what our considerations would be. Thank you so much for joining us.